Hey everyone, I'm Said and welcome back. In our previous videos, we covered the product to sum formulas in detail. Today, it's time to put those formulas into practice. We're gonna solve 5 different integrals to make sure you've mastered this technique. Let's jump right in. Number 1, the integral of sine of 3x times sine of 2x dx. First, let's look at our identity for sine of a times sine of b equals 1/2 times cosine of a minus b minus cosine of a plus b. So applying these to our integral, where a equals 3x and b equals 2x. So we have I equals the integral of 1/2 times cosine of a minus b equals x minus cosine of a plus b equals 5x dx. Now we integrate term by term. As you know, the integral of cosine of x is sine of x. And for cosine of 5x, it's 1/5 sine of x. So we get 1/2 times sine of x minus the integral of cosine of 5x equals 1/5 sine of 5x, right? So we have 1/2 times sine of x minus 1/10 sine of 5x plus c. Number 2, the integral of sine of 3x times cosine of 5x dx. For this one, we use the identity for sine of a times cosine of b equals 1/2 times sine of a minus b plus sine of a plus b. So substitute a equals 3x and b equals 5x. So the integral becomes 1/2 times sine of a minus b equals negative 2x plus sine of a plus b equals sine of 8x, right? dx. And remember that sine of negative 2x equals negative sine of 2x. So we have 1/2 the integral of negative sine of 2x plus sine of 8x dx. And as you know, the integral of sine of ax equals negative 1/a cosine of ax, right? So we have 1/2 times negative the integral of sine of 2x according to this formula equals negative 1/2 cosine of 2x plus 1/2 times the integral of sine of 8x equals negative 1/8 cosine of 8x. So final answer is positive 1/4 cosine of 2x negative 1/16 cosine of 8x plus c. Number 3, the integral of cosine of x over 2 times x over 3 dx. For the product of two cosines, we use cosine of a times cosine of b equals 1/2 times cosine of a minus b plus cosine of a plus b. Here a equals x over 2 and b equals x over 3. So the integral becomes the integral of 1/2 times cosine of a minus b. So x over 2 minus x over 3 equals x over 6 plus cosine of a plus b. X over 2 plus x over 3 equals 5x over 6 dx. Right? So we have 1/2 times the integral of cosine of x over 6 plus cosine of 5x over 6 dx equals 1/2 times, as you know, the integral of cosine of ax dx equals 1 over a sine of ax, right? So we must divide it by the coefficient of x. So the coefficient of x in cosine of x over 6 is 1 over 6, right? So 1 over 1 over 6 sine of x over 6 plus 1/2 times the coefficient of x in cosine of 5x over 6 is 5 over 6. So 1 over 5 over 6 times sine of 5x over 6 plus c, right? So final answer equals 1 over 1 over 6 equals 6 times 1/2 equals 3 sine of x over 6 plus 1/2 times 6 over 5 equals 3 over 5 sine of 5x over 6 plus c. Number 4. The integral of cosine of 4x times sine of 6x dx. For our fourth example, we have cosine of 4x times sine of 6x. Even though cosine comes first, we use the same formula. Using formula, sine of a times cosine of b equals 1/2 sine of a plus b plus sine of a minus b, right? So a equals 6x and b equals 4x. So the integral becomes 1/2 times the integral of sine of a plus b equals 10x plus sine of a minus b is 2x dx. So integration becomes I equals 1/2 times the integral of sine of ax equals negative 1 over a cosine of ax. So negative 1 over 10 cosine of 10x plus 1/2 times negative 1/2 cosine of 2x plus c, right? So I equals negative 1 over 20 cosine of 10x plus negative 1 over 4 cosine of 2x plus c. And finally, look at this one. The integral of sine of 5x times cosine of 5x dx. You could use the product to sum formula, but there is a faster way. Remember the double-angled identity. We know that sine of 2 theta equals 2 sine of theta times cosine of theta, right? So sine of theta times cosine of theta equals 1/2 sine of 2 theta, right? So if theta is 5x, so we have sine of 5x times cosine of 5x equals 1/2 sine of 10x, right? So the integral becomes the integral of sine of 5x times cosine of 5x dx equals the integral of 1/2 sine of 10x dx, right? So 1/2 times the integral of sine of 10x equals -1/10 cosine of 10x plus c, or -1/20 cosine of 10x plus c.